Richard Hetherington O'Neill stood on the bridge of USS Wahoo in January 1943, watching the Pacific stretch endlessly before him. The sun was low, casting a shimmering orange light across the calm waters, but beneath that serene surface, danger lurked in every shadow. The 32-year-old lieutenant commander from New Hampshire had already completed several patrols as executive officer, but nothing prepared him for what he was about to witness under Commander Dudley Walker Morton. Morton, everyone called him Mush, had just taken command of Wahoo, and he was about to revolutionize American submarine warfare in ways the Navy brass never imagined. Most submarine commanders in early 1943 operated by the book. They'd spot an enemy convoy, submerge to periscope depth, fire torpedoes from a safe distance, then dive deep and run. Conservative, cautious, often ineffective. The Mark 14 torpedoes were problematic enough without commanders adding excessive range to the equation. Patrols were measured, predictable, and rarely decisive. But Mush Morton looked at submarine warfare through a different lens entirely. He didn't think like a man constrained by doctrine. He thought like a predator. He studied Japanese shipping routes with an intensity bordering on obsession, memorized convoy schedules, and imagined attacks not just from distance but at close range, where his torpedoes would find their mark with devastating efficiency. Richard O'Neill observed every movement, every decision, and felt a mixture of awe and apprehension. Morton's strategies were daring, sometimes reckless, but they were calculated. Every man on Wahoo knew that the ocean could be merciless. One mistake, one misjudged maneuver, and they would vanish without a trace. As the sub slipped silently beneath the waves, O'Neill realized that the patrol ahead wouldn't be ordinary. They were no longer just hunting ships. They were about to rewrite the rules of undersea combat. And as the periscope cut through the morning mist, a distant convoy came into view, a line of Japanese freighters, oblivious to the predator now stalking them. The convoy loomed ahead, a string of unarmed freighters and a handful of lightly armed escorts, cutting across the Pacific like sitting ducks. From the periscope, Richard O'Neill could see the Japanese flags fluttering in the wind, unaware that a steel shadow now moved silently beneath them. Morton had been observing the convoy for over an hour, plotting angles, estimating speed, and calculating distance. He didn't just rely on charts or previous experience. He relied on intuition honed from countless hours under the ocean and in classrooms. Every decision mattered. One wrong calculation, and Wahoo would be sitting in the belly of a Japanese depth charge pattern, and the men on board would have no warning. The crew worked in hushed anticipation. Every clatter of equipment, every murmur of a sailor, seemed amplified in the steel hull. The torpedo officer double-checked settings, adjusting gyro angles with meticulous care. The sonar operator strained to detect distant echoes, filtering out the natural sounds of the ocean. Owen could feel the tension in the air, a pressure heavier than the deep waters pressing on the submarine from all sides. Morton's plan was audacious. He would take the sub inside the convoy, closer than any American commander had dared. The Mark 14 torpedoes were still temperamental, notorious for running too deep or failing to explode on impact. But Morton trusted in precise calculations, in timing, and in the crew's skill. He trusted that surprise was a weapon as lethal as any torpedo. Hours passed. The convoy drew nearer. Morton whispered to O'Neill, "Remember, it's not just about hitting them. It's about teaching them fear." There was no arrogance in his voice, only steely resolve. The strategy was simple in words but complex in execution. Approach undetected, strike decisively, and withdraw before the escorts could respond. As the distance closed, the periscope revealed more than ships. It revealed patterns. Freighters maintained formation but had little coordination with the escorts. Gaps in the patrol line appeared like invitations. O'Neill realized that Morton was not just looking at targets. He was reading a language of movement, anticipating reactions, and exploiting weaknesses in real time. The torpedo tubes were loaded, each explosive carefully prepared. O'Neill glanced around the cramped control room. The faces of the crew reflected a mixture of focus and fear, knowing that the coming minutes would test every ounce of their training. And then Morton gave the order. Silence fell. The torpedoes slid out, vanishing into the water with barely a ripple. Seconds later, explosions rocked the convoy. Fire erupted along the freighter's decks, sending columns of smoke into the sky. Morton's gamble had worked. The Wahoo had penetrated the heart of the enemy's formation and struck with deadly precision. Owen's heart raced as he watched the chaos unfold. He knew this was just the beginning. Each patrol would bring new challenges, new risks, but also new lessons. And every ship sunk was more than a tally. It was proof that daring, intelligence, and calculated audacity could change the tide of war. Before we continue, Let me ask you, if you were on Wahoo's bridge at this moment, could you handle the pressure of making life and death decisions in the silent depths of the Pacific? Drop your thoughts in the comments and tell me where you're watching this video from. And if you want more incredible World War II stories like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss future videos. The Pacific stretched endlessly ahead, but for Wahoo, every patrol was a new chance to strike fear into the heart of the Japanese Navy. Each success was a testament to Morton's brilliance, but also a reminder of the deadly stakes they faced beneath the waves. After the first attack, the Wahoo slipped silently beneath the waves, its hull cutting through the Pacific like a predator stalking its prey. The explosions above were distant but unmistakable. Ships on fire, crew scrambling, the enemy's confidence shattered. In the control room, Morton's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the adrenaline coursing through every other sailor's veins. "Damage report," Morton said, his voice cutting through the low hum of the engines. Reports came quickly. Minor shrapnel on the hull, a few scorched decks from the passing fire, but nothing threatening the submarine's integrity. The crew exhaled collectively, though the tension never fully left the room. Each patrol was a high-stakes chess game against the enemy and the ocean itself, and every decision could mean life or death. Oni stood beside Morton, taking mental notes on his captain's methods. Morton didn't just command, he observed. He read sonar patterns, judged wind and current, calculated angles of attack, and predicted enemy reactions before they even occurred. The Americans had learned the hard way in the Pacific that Japanese ships were fast, aggressive, and often more dangerous than they appeared. But Morton had a gift for anticipating their moves. The Wahoo surfaced briefly at dusk, the faint orange glow of the sunset reflecting on the water. Crew members moved quietly, performing checks, cleaning torpedo tubes, and keeping watch. Morton allowed himself a moment of reflection. Each successful strike was a victory, yes, but it was also a reminder that the war demanded more than bravery. Strategy, precision, and intuition were just as vital. For the next day, Morton charted a new course, following intelligence on a nearby convoy rumored to be carrying critical supplies. He knew that approaching from the east would put them in a favorable position, but it also carried risks. Submerged navigation was treacherous. Reefs, shallow waters, and unpredictable currents could easily reveal their location. Every sailor on board knew the stakes, and yet there was an unspoken trust in Morton's decisions. The hours dragged on, the submarine moving slowly but deliberately through the water. Owen observed how Morton issued orders, not loudly, but with precision. The crew responded immediately, each action rehearsed but executed with care. Morton's method was almost surgical, and it became clear why he had earned the reputation he had among submariners. Finally, the convoy appeared on the horizon, stretching for miles. Morton's eyes narrowed as he studied the formation. He calculated speed, distance, and the best angle of approach. The Wahoo descended to periscope depth, ready for another strike. Torpedoes were loaded once more, carefully aligned to target critical vessels. One glanced around the control room. He saw the same mix of fear and determination he had felt before, but now it was accompanied by a quiet confidence. They had survived the first attack, and now they were ready for the second. Morton's genius lay not just in his tactics, but in the trust he instilled in every man aboard. Before we continue, here's a quick question for you. Could you remain calm under such extreme pressure, knowing one wrong move could sink your vessel and your crew? Comment below and tell me where you're watching this from. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss more incredible stories of bravery and strategy from World War II. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the water. But Wahoo moved forward, relentless, guided by Morton's unparalleled skill and the unshakable resolve of its crew. Every patrol was a lesson, every strike a message. The Pacific belonged to those who dared to master it. The next morning, the Pacific stretched endlessly under a pale, misty light. Morton's eyes scanned the horizon from the conning tower, his posture relaxed yet alert. Every wave, every ripple mattered. To an untrained eye, it was just water, but to Morton, it was information. Enemy ships left wakes, currents shifted, and even the slightest disturbance could hint at hidden dangers. O'Neill and the other officers studied their charts, but Morton relied on more than maps. He trusted experience, instinct, and meticulous observation. His plan for the day was audacious, even reckless by conventional standards. The Japanese convoys were heavily armed, and each merchant ship was accompanied by multiple destroyers, ready to respond to any submarine threat. Most commanders would have waited for nightfall, relying on darkness to mask their movements. Morton would strike at dawn, Speed at 2/3, he ordered. Voice calm, almost casual. The engines responded with a low rumble, barely audible beneath the steel hull. The crew executed every command flawlessly. Each man knew the consequences of failure. Yet there was a sense of precision, almost elegance, to the way they moved. The convoy appeared on the horizon, steaming steadily in formation. Morton squinted through the periscope. He noted the positions of the destroyers, the spacing between cargo ships, the distance to shore batteries. Every piece of information mattered. One miscalculation, one misaligned torpedo, and the Wahoo could easily become a death trap. O'Neill could feel the tension in the room, thick enough to touch. But Morton remained serene, issuing orders with the confidence of a man who had already played out the scenario hundreds of times in his mind. The Wahoo descended slowly, riding just beneath the waves. Sonar operators tracked the enemy ships, calculating speed and distance, feeding data to Morton. The first attack was surgical. Torpedoes slid silently through the water, striking the lead freighter squarely. Explosions rocked the convoy, sending smoke and flames into the morning sky. Enemy gunners scrambled, firing wildly at anything that moved, but Morton had already anticipated their reaction. The Wahoo shifted position, presenting a minimal target, while lining up the next set of torpedoes. O'Neill marveled at the efficiency of the crew. Every torpedo fired, every maneuver executed, was a testament to discipline and training, but above all, to Morton's leadership. He had created a system where panic was impossible because every man knew his role to perfection. Hours passed in a tense rhythm of tracking, calculating, and striking. The convoy faltered under repeated attacks. Mortar shells splashed around them, but the Wahoo remained elusive. Morton's method was relentless. Strike quickly, vanish, observe, and strike again. By midday, the convoy had suffered significant damage, its formation broken, morale shattered. In the quiet moments between attacks, Morton reviewed his next targets. He considered the risks, the potential gains, and the lives of his crew. Submarine warfare was unforgiving. A single misstep could end everything. Yet Morton balanced audacity with caution, instinct with planning. Before we move forward, take a moment and imagine yourself in O'Neill's shoes. Could you stay calm, calculating every move under constant threat, knowing one mistake could doom you and your crew? And if you enjoy these intense, real-life wartime stories, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more detailed accounts of bravery, strategy, and naval genius during World War II. As the sun began to dip again, casting shadows across the restless Pacific, Wahoo prepared for its next strike. The crew moved with purpose, guided by Morton's unparalleled understanding of both the enemy and the ocean itself. Each maneuver, each torpedo, each calculated risk brought them closer to their ultimate goal: mastery of the seas and the disruption of Japanese supply lines that could turn the tide of war. The night fell quickly over the Pacific, bringing a heavy, humid darkness that clung to the submarine like a wet blanket. Morton stood on the bridge for a moment, letting his eyes adjust to the dim light of the stars above. The sea was deceptively calm, but Morton knew better. Calm waters could hide minefields, patrolling destroyers, or enemy submarines lying in wait. Every ripple, every shift in the current was a potential clue. O'Neill moved silently beside him, notebook in hand, recording observations and procedures. He had begun to see patterns in Morton's methods, patterns that, if applied correctly, could redefine submarine warfare. Morton didn't just hunt ships. He hunted opportunities. He saw gaps in formations, predictable behaviors, and weaknesses that the enemy didn't even know existed. "Keep the depth steady at 60 feet, Morton ordered, his voice barely audible over the engines. "We don't want to disturb their sonar too early." The crew followed his instructions flawlessly. Each man was hyper-aware, moving with purpose and precision. There was no room for error. Every action had a consequence. Every calculation mattered. O'Neill watched as the sonar operator's hands danced over the controls, plotting the convoy's course with meticulous care. The data flowed into Morton's mind like a living map, and he responded with quiet decisiveness. The convoy reappeared on the radar, a slow, steady stream of freighters and escorting destroyers. Morton's eyes narrowed as he scanned their positions. The Japanese ships were well trained, but Morton had studied their behavior extensively. He knew their blind spots, the timing of their maneuvers, and the angles where their defenses were weakest. "Prepare torpedoes 3 and 4, Morton instructed. The crew obeyed without hesitation, sliding the lethal weapons into the tubes with practiced efficiency. O'Neill could feel the tension in the air as the Wahoo glided silently beneath the waves, invisible, yet poised to strike. The first salvo launched with deadly accuracy, Explosions erupted along the lead freighters, sending plumes of smoke into the night sky. Panic spread through the convoy. Mortar shells and searchlights scanned the waters, but the Wahoo had already shifted position, anticipating every move. Morton's strategy was clear: relentless pressure, rapid attacks, and never allowing the enemy to regroup. Hours passed like this, a relentless cycle of observation, calculation, and attack. Morton's audacity was matched only by his caution. Every strike was measured, every maneuver deliberate. O'Neill could see how this method, repeated over time, could cripple supply lines and demoralize enemy crews without exposing the submarine to unnecessary danger. At one point, Morton glanced at O'Neill and said, "The sea tells you everything you need to know, if you learn to listen." O'Neill nodded, understanding the depth of what Morton meant. This wasn't just about torpedoes and targets. It was about awareness, instinct, and mastery of both technology and nature. Before we move forward, let me ask you, can you imagine commanding a vessel like this, knowing that one wrong move could mean certain death? Where are you watching this video from? Drop your answer in the comments, and if you're fascinated by these incredible wartime stories, subscribe to the channel for more. By dawn, the convoy was in disarray. Fires burned across several freighters. The escorting destroyers struggled to regain formation, and morale had plummeted. Morton studied the situation, plotting the next attack with the precision of a chess master. Each decision designed to maximize effect while minimizing risk. The Wahoo was no longer just a submarine. It had become a symbol of ingenuity, daring, and the extraordinary capabilities of a well-trained crew led by a brilliant commander. The morning light filtered through the portholes, casting faint streaks across the interior of the Wahoo. Inside, the hum of machinery and the rhythmic pumping of the ballast tanks created a steady pulse, almost like the submarine itself was alive. Morton sat in the control room, chart spread before him, eyes scanning every line, every coordinate. This was not just navigation. It was strategy, prediction, and anticipation all rolled into one. O'Neill observed silently, taking careful notes. He had begun to understand the subtle genius in Morton's approach. Every maneuver, every depth change, every silent glide through enemy waters was calculated. Morton didn't rely solely on technology. He relied on instinct honed through experience, on patterns observed in enemy behavior, and on a meticulous understanding of physics and the sea. "Keep her steady at 80 feet, Morton commanded. "We want to ride the thermocline. They won't see us here." The crew executed the order with practiced efficiency. The submarine seemed to sink deeper into the ocean, hidden in a layer of cold water that distorted sonar signals. Morton's strategy was as much about patience as aggression. He understood that success often depended not on brute force, but on knowing when to wait, when to strike, and how to exploit every weakness in the enemy's defenses. Hours later, the radar detected another convoy. This one was smaller, lightly guarded, but Morton treated it with the same meticulous attention to detail. Every ship's speed, every wake, every shadow was accounted for. O'Neill noted how Morton plotted intercept angles that were almost preternatural, as if he could see the future. The first torpedo tubes were prepped, loaded with the lethal Mark 14 torpedoes. The tension in the control room was palpable. Morton gave a quiet nod, signaling the launch. Explosions rocked the convoy, sending plumes of smoke into the morning sky. The crew maintained silence, anticipating enemy countermeasures. O'Neill could see the psychological impact on Morton's crew. Confidence, precision, and trust in their commander transformed nervous young sailors into a well-oiled machine, capable of executing complex maneuvers under extreme stress. Morton's philosophy was clear. Every action had a purpose, every error had consequences, but careful planning could turn even the most dangerous situation into opportunity. The Wahoo shifted silently, moving in a pattern designed to confuse and outmaneuver the remaining escorts. Morton's audacity was matched by caution. Every movement minimized exposure, yet maximized damage. O'Neill realized that this was not mere luck, it was methodical, calculated genius. By late afternoon, the convoy was in chaos. Fires burned across several ships. The remaining escorts scrambled to regroup, and the psychological toll on the enemy was evident. Morton leaned back, surveying the results. "This is how the sea rewards preparation and courage," he said quietly. At this point, if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more incredible tales from history. O'Neill made one final note for the day. The Wahoo was more than a submarine. Under Morton's command, it had become an instrument of strategy, psychology, and calculated aggression, a combination that would make it one of the most feared vessels in the Pacific. The Wahoo moved silently through the waters of the East China Sea, the early morning mist curling around the conning tower. Morton leaned against the railing, peering through the periscope as though the distant horizon was a chessboard, and every enemy ship was a piece to be captured or destroyed. Oni watched him, realizing more each day that Morton's mind operated differently from any commander he had ever met. "Watch their formation," Morton muttered, almost to himself. "Notice the gaps. They're predictable if you know what to look for." Oni adjusted the periscope and began studying the convoy ahead. Merchant ships, lightly escorted by 2 destroyers, steamed steadily toward Shanghai. It seemed an ordinary target, but Morton's eyes saw beyond the obvious. He was already thinking 2 steps ahead. How to position the Wahoo for maximum effect, how to strike without exposing the submarine, how to escape after delivering a lethal punch. The crew prepared the torpedo tubes, each man performing his task with precise discipline. Morton didn't shout orders. He guided, corrected, and instilled confidence. Every motion of the submarine was deliberate. Even the decision of when to dive or surface had been carefully calculated to exploit enemy blind spots and sonar limitations. By mid-morning, the Wahoo had maneuvered into an ideal firing position. Morton's strategy involved not a single broadside attack, but sequential, calculated shots that would sow confusion and maximize damage. Oni could feel the tension in the air. The first torpedo launch went smoothly, striking a freighter squarely amidships. Flames erupted, smoke twisted into the sky, and the convoy's escort reacted instantly, but too late. Morton wasn't satisfied with merely hitting targets. He wanted to dominate psychologically. Each movement was designed to terrify, to create doubt in the enemy's mind. Oni noted how the destroyers scattered, unsure of where the next strike would come from. Morton calculated their reactions with uncanny precision, predicting every turn, every evasive maneuver. Hours passed as the Wahoo struck again and again. By nightfall, 3 enemy vessels had been sunk or heavily damaged. The crew moved efficiently, tired but exhilarated. Morton, ever vigilant, reviewed the day's engagement, correcting small mistakes, praising precise actions, and preparing for the next patrol. It was in moments like this that Oni realized Morton's genius wasn't just tactical, it was inspirational. He turned a submarine into a deadly orchestra, each man a skilled musician playing a part in a symphony of destruction. Every engagement taught lessons, refined techniques, and honed instincts. At this point, if you're captivated by Morton's audacity, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more incredible wartime stories. By the end of the day, the Wahoo had proven once again that audacity, meticulous planning, and fearless execution could turn even a small submarine into one of the most formidable weapons of the Pacific theater. Oni knew they were witnessing history. The following morning, the Pacific sun rose over a glassy sea, revealing nothing but endless blue. Yet beneath the calm surface, the Wahoo prowled like a shark, silent and lethal. Mush Morton sat in the command center, a map spread before him, plotting the next engagement. His eyes were sharp, scanning, calculating probabilities, and memorizing enemy shipping lanes. Owen stood nearby, notebook in hand, jotting down observations. Each day under Morton's command was a masterclass in submarine warfare. He wasn't just a commander. He was a strategist, a psychologist, and a tactician all rolled into one. His understanding of enemy behavior went far beyond reading convoys or anticipating maneuvers. He understood human nature, predicting panic, hesitation, and overconfidence in the Japanese crews they hunted. "Notice their formation," Morton said quietly, pointing at a series of small freighters escorted by a lone destroyer. "They think the escort can protect them, but it's predictable. Their attention is divided. That's where we strike." Hours passed as the Wahoo shadowed the convoy, adjusting depth, calculating currents, and preparing torpedoes. Every crew member knew their role, executed it with precision, and trusted Morton's judgment implicitly. The first torpedo was fired at 0930 hours, hitting the largest freighter squarely in the engine room. The explosion reverberated through the water, and Morton watched the enemy vessel's response like a hawk. Panic set in immediately among the escorts, but it was disorganized and inefficient, exactly as Morton predicted. Oni marveled at the psychological mastery Morton wielded. He didn't just destroy ships, he dismantled confidence. Each maneuver created doubt, fear, and chaos. The Japanese sailors were operating in a world of uncertainty, unable to predict where or when the Wahoo would strike next. Morton's patience was unmatched. He waited, calculated, and struck only when the odds were in his favor. By mid-afternoon, 2 more ships had been damaged or sunk. The crew remained calm, disciplined, and methodical. Morton reviewed each shot, adjusting angles, torpedo spread, and attack sequences for maximum effectiveness. Oni realized that what they were witnessing wasn't luck. It was meticulous preparation, bold thinking, and an unparalleled understanding of both machine and man. At this point, if you're enjoying the story and want to see more incredible wartime tactics, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Morton allowed the crew a brief respite, but his mind never rested. The Wahoo had proven once again that audacity, precision, and unorthodox thinking could turn a submarine into a legend. Oni knew every patrol, every strike under Morton's command was shaping history, and the enemy was learning fear firsthand. The following day, the Wahoo continued its patrol in the East China Sea, moving silently beneath the waves. Morton's mind was already 3 steps ahead, analyzing shipping patterns, patrol schedules, and even the psychological state of enemy crews. Oni stood by the periscope, scanning the horizon, but Morton's eyes saw more than the surface. They saw opportunities, weaknesses, and the potential for decisive strikes. A convoy appeared late that morning. 6 medium-sized cargo ships escorted by 2 destroyers. Morton's fingers drummed lightly on the table. This wasn't just a chance for destruction. It was a test of his unconventional tactics against a well-armed escort. The traditional approach would have been to wait for nightfall, attack submerged, and hope the torpedoes hit. But Morton wasn't a traditional commander. "Surface approach," he said calmly, almost too casually. "They won't expect us in daylight." Oni's eyebrows rose. Daylight attacks were considered suicidal by most submarine crews. The risk was enormous. Detection by escort ships could mean death for the entire crew. But Morton's confidence was absolute. He explained that the convoys escorting destroyers had predictable reaction patterns. They would focus on protecting the largest freighter first, leaving gaps elsewhere. That gap would be Wahoo's strike window. The submarine rose slowly, engines muffled, blending with the waves. Every man aboard understood the stakes. Torpedoes were loaded, calculated, and ready. Morton watched the convoy carefully. "Remember," he said, "timing is everything. Wait for the moment when chaos starts to ripple through their formation. That's when we hit." At 11:30 hours, the first torpedo was launched. It struck the second cargo ship amidships, sending flames and smoke into the sky. Morton observed the reaction. The destroyers veered to protect the damaged ship, exposing the other freighters. Like clockwork, Morton ordered 2 more torpedoes fired in rapid succession, taking down another freighter and damaging the largest vessel. Owen scribbled in his notebook, struggling to capture the genius of what he was witnessing. Morton had turned audacity, precision, and psychological insight into a weapon as lethal as any torpedo. By the time the convoy scrambled, the Wahoo had already disappeared beneath the waves, leaving the Japanese ships in disarray and fear etched into every sailor's mind. Morton allowed himself a rare smile. The crew had executed his plan flawlessly. Each strike wasn't just about sinking ships. It was about dismantling confidence, creating panic, and teaching the enemy that no convoy was safe day or night. At this point, if you're enjoying this detailed account of submarine warfare, don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. The tactics Morton employed weren't just daring. They reshaped the way the Pacific War was fought. By nightfall, the Wahoo surfaced briefly, engines quiet, as Morton reviewed the day's results. His strategy had worked perfectly. 4 enemy vessels destroyed or damaged in broad daylight, and the Japanese command would be analyzing these events for weeks, trying to understand what had struck them so unexpectedly. By early February 1943, the Wahoo had completed yet another patrol under Morton's daring command. Each mission brought more confirmation that his aggressive tactics were reshaping American submarine warfare. Where other commanders hesitated, Morton seized opportunities. Where others relied solely on stealth, he combined psychology, timing, and precision to crush Japanese shipping. One reflected on how far the crew had come. What had begun as cautious training missions had evolved into calculated high-stakes attacks that left the enemy reeling. Every patrol added to their experience, sharpening instincts and fostering absolute trust in Morton's leadership. The men had seen firsthand how audacity, when paired with knowledge and discipline, could multiply the effectiveness of even a single submarine. The final patrol of this series would cement Morton's reputation. Intelligence reported a convoy of 8 transports with 4 destroyers, moving near the Bungo Strait. Many would have waited, but Morton had other plans. He studied their formation, predicted their reactions, and briefed the crew with precision. Timing, placement, and speed were everything. When the Wahoo engaged, torpedoes struck with deadly accuracy. 3 transports sank, 2 more were heavily damaged, and the destroyers scrambled in panic, unable to regain control. Morton's tactics had proven once again, fear and confusion could be as powerful as firepower. The psychological impact on the Japanese Navy was significant, spreading caution and hesitancy among convoys for months to come. For O'Neill and the crew, the mission was more than a victory. It was a lesson in leadership, innovation, and courage. Mush Morton had not only proven the effectiveness of aggressive submarine tactics, but he had also inspired a generation of American submarine commanders who would follow his example throughout the Pacific War. As the Wahoo returned to port, Morton stood silently on the bridge, watching the horizon. Every ship sunk, every convoy disrupted, was proof that unconventional thinking, paired with courage and skill, could change the course of a battle, and even a war.